Thanks, Brian. Thank you so much. I am pleased, honored, and humbled to accept this award and to join the past recipients who I have long admired and respected. I would like to start by thanking the board and the members of the Gryphon Football Committee for their support and confidence in allowing me to be the recipient for 2020's Distinguished Alumni. I especially want to thank Brian Clough and Randy Dimitrov for their contribution and leadership during the last year and handing off the baton so smoothly. Thank you. An enormous salute to all of this year's nominees, each of whom have made incredible contributions to the Gryphon football community. Thank you to those who nominated me and supported my nomination. A man is blessed with a family. For better or for worse, those are the vows we take before God in marriage. It's easy to live with the better, but rarely can you find someone who sticks around and endures you for the worse. To my wife and my daughters, Victoria, Angela, and Patricia, who are much stronger than their old man, I have worked tirelessly to give you for better. Thank you. The blessings of being healthy and alive have been greatly reminded to us over the past 12 months more than ever before. As we begin another day, let us reflect, meditate, pray, and engage in those affected by the pandemic. This time will pass soon. It's ironic that I tell you the loss of a loved one can become an opportunity of a lifetime. It may sound unbelievable or even cliche. It starts back when I first had interest in football. I was just 11. It was 1993. Scorned kid, bullied a lot. My family outings were mainly at banquet halls. And I was at a Greek wedding at this time, and I was seeing a crowd right by the coat rack with a small little 13-inch television. And all I could hear was people screaming out, "Argos." And the Toronto Argonauts won the Grey Cup that year. It was the first real championship I'd ever witnessed on our home soil. When you see those things for the first time, it becomes extremely memorable and carries on over to school. My grade 6 teacher, Frank Fuggerelli, not only had an impact on me in football, but he also still to this day has an impact on the football program in the Duff and Peel School Board. But in grade 6, he had brought a special guest one day. It was Terry Greer. And for those of you who don't know him, he was famous back then for getting 2,000 yards in a season. Also, he not just won a Grey Cup, but he also won a Super Bowl with the 49ers. At that time, he was the most popular athlete in the country. I never met anyone that important in sports before. Although I was a hockey player at the time, I took the interest in football from that day moving forward, and I carried it forward to grade 9 in my junior year. Fast forward to high school, I was fortunate to start as a linebacker in my junior year for the Philip Pocock Pirates. It was a great thing that happened for me, and unfortunately, a couple years later, my football career went to an extreme halt when I made the decision to quit sports in my senior year. You see, in grade 11, I found out that my mother had breast cancer. There was no script on how to deal with this, and I kept looking for ways to deal with the pain. The decision I chose was to be rebellious and constantly making poor decisions. I used the excuse to avoid injury, to quit, so that my mother wouldn't worry. I was pretty lame. It took me out of sports and a lot of other things that were in my dreams, especially being a collegiate athlete. I thought I would just end my school grade year in grade 12, graduate, and get a job pumping gas and live day by day. Ironically, I discovered a letter that my mother had wrote to me, and she created a bunch of requests. One was to get a real education and to get a university degree. So I decided that I would pursue that. And a couple of weeks later, one of my good friends had asked me to come visit University of Guelph to see if maybe I should change my education of where I was having my school. They knew I had a better potential in my life and wanted to prevent me from making self-destructing decisions. On June of 1992, I visited Guelph University. It was love at first sight. I went to the campus and it only took me about 1 hour to figure out what I wanted to do. I transferred over immediately. And then afterwards, I was driving home to say the exciting news to my girlfriend at the time. But beforehand, as I was driving by, I saw the stadium. And the stadium was quite amazing. I'd never seen anything like it before. So I drove up to the front doors. I walked right in and I saw an individual there. And I asked if he knew how to get on the football team or if there was a way to try out. He told me right away I could try out for the team. Took me out for a tour for 2 hours on the team, the whole campus everywhere, right to the athletic center. So as I was really interested now to try out for the team, which was summer camp coming in 1992, he introduced me to Pat Tracy. Pat Tracy at the time was a defensive coordinator for the team. not the most inviting person I ever met. And I tell you, it took 5 years to earn his respect, which I really, really respect to this day. But going back to the individual, I wondered who he was because I thought he was probably the head coach. And he said, no, I'm Tony D'Angelo. I'm the equipment guy. From that day on, I called him the Godfather. I started to see what Gryphons meant. Family. That may not sound like a big deal, but many never learned that distinction. I learned many lessons from my mother, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. I also learned to be a man from some various people that affected me the most while being a Gryphon. First and foremost, Brian Clough. Brian, as you know, was a D-line coach. I was not planning to be in the trenches. I was a linebacker. I did not want to play for Brian at first. My first days at camp, he kept bringing me over to his group of people, and I was being used and beaten down, reminding me of my bullying days. At least I thought that's what it was. But he was actually teaching me to be a man. He put so much grit in me that I've become more resilient than my entire life when I go into my flight mode. He was not only a coach, but became like a surrogate father to me. He taught me the admiration of friends and family. He spent 38 years of his life with the Gryphons, changing 3 to 4 generations' lives. He's a champion, he's a player, he's a coach, a husband, a father, and he's a mentor. Thank you, Brian. Having a privilege to play 5 years for Guelph, I could be here all day to discuss on who else affected me in my life, but there's a few heroes that I'd like to talk about that stand out. First, Dan McNally, for not letting me leave the team. He was a great coach, but he also saw something in me, and I tried to quit a couple times during my first camp experience. He told me that if I paid the price, the returns will be unlimited, and I can only imagine what my life would be like if I walked away back then. I'd like to thank the entire 1992 championship team as well. They really taught me what winners were made of and what family was. But in particular, I'd like to think that one person deserves that individually, and that was Mike O'Shea. He was one of the people that I knew that was the biggest athlete I've ever played with. I mean, I met Terry Greer, but I got to play with Mike O'Shea. And to be aside with one of Canada's greatest football players in the history, I consider him to be the GOAT of the CFL on the field and off the field. Our man of honor, who I enjoyed playing with for 5 years together, Kyle Walters. To know him, you would love him. I looked up to him on how he carried himself throughout the teammates, not just on his performance, his personality and his leadership. Always an honor to be around with on and off the field. I would like to thank another coach on our football team who just came back to the Gryphons last year, Dennis McPhee, Deaker. I don't know if he knows this, and there was something very significant he did in my life. In 1994, we were playing a horrible year on a statistical basis. It was a team of rebuilding. And at the same time, another team, York University, which had the worst seasons in 8 years of their history, was on the verge of a winning season. And we were the second culprits to becoming a victim of that. And we lost to York University on our soil. I wanted to quit again. And I thought I was done football for the rest of my life. At that time, Coach McPhee was working with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and I guess he knew what was going on and he wanted to help the team before it broke down into pieces. He came out that night and brought some of his team from the Ticats to encourage all of us that this was a great opportunity. I had a really great one-on-one with him, and I didn't really keep myself convinced on what he was saying because I was very upset at what was going on, and I had, again, my residual entitlements from my past. So he introduced me to another individual. I didn't recognize him. I don't know who he was. This individual gave me a pep talk for about 5-10 minutes. I probably disregarded most of the things he said. And then what he did was he basically showed me a ring. And then he gave it to me and he says, look, I'm going to give you this ring and you wear it all night. And if this doesn't convince you about how this is the best thing that's ever happened to you in your sports career and probably in your life, I got nothing for you. That was Terry Greer's Super Bowl ring. And I didn't even know that this was the first athletic hero I met. So thank you, Coach Deaker. Thanks for that night because, again, I could have probably not been here today had it not been for nights like that. Speaking of which, I want to thank my 1996 team. Too many names to individualize. Everybody is my brother. You know, we have a championship together and we've carried that on for decades. And that team just had so much brotherhood. In particular, I got to tell or give a little bit of honorable mention to my boys on the trenches, Brent Dallymore, Jeremy Oxley, and Chris Camboy, of course. All of you guys were very important in my life. You still are to this day. And what a great year we had. It's created the best friendships in my life. And now we get to see our successes run through with our families as well. Like many of you, I was concerned about going into the world and doing something bigger than myself, until someone smarter than myself made me realize that there's nothing bigger than myself. Try never to be the smartest person in the room. And if you are, I suggest even smarter people, or find a different room. In professional circles, it's called networking. In organizations, it's called team building. And in life, it's called family, friends, and community. We are all gifts to each other. And my own growth as a leader has shown me again and again that the most rewarding experience comes from my relationships. Stu Lang's a great example of his knowledge and leadership. He took our culture and moved the needle exponentially for the Gryphon football program. You are all my heroes. To be a hero, you have to be the person who confronts horrible, chaotic potential. It's been a gift to have that opportunity to get to know the cultural community and introduce it into a larger one in so many ways. Sometimes I think that the only thing that's important really is just letting each other know that we're here, reminding each other that we're part of a larger self. The pandemic's the most enduring feature will be an accelerant of existing trends, the trend that encapsulates the greatest reshuffling of our communities and relationships. The pandemic has given us a preview of our dispersed future. Today we have social distancing. Tomorrow the distancing will be structural. The evidence of our weakening community, our degraded empathy, is all around us. The pandemic has been a preview to all of that. As we progressively get back to normal with COVID leaving us with just a memory, you should too realize this. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of other opinions drown you and your own inner voice, your heart and your intuition. Don't be envious of others' testimony. If you haven't received your own blessings, don't despair. Say to yourself, my time is coming. And when it hits the surface of the earth, people shall yield in admiration. Accountability is hard. Blame is easy. One builds trust, the other destroys it. We, as the lucky people to be part of the Gryphon community, have been the beneficiaries. In closing, I just want to say how fortunate we are to have our heroes in the community. How fortunate we are to have the diverse and excellent organizations that provide us quality experience throughout the University of Guelph. And how fortunate we are to have the individuals who bring us their talent and expertise to this organization. We must continue to work together as a unite group in making the Gryphon football community a significant player with respect to education, economic development, health, and human welfare. As part of my family's contribution throughout the years, our biggest step was to start a scholarship for female student athletes with grit in memory of my mother, Soteria. Our family would like to announce another addition to the support for the future of students on the football team itself. But first, something to ponder. If you have food in the refrigerator, clothes on your back, a roof over your head, and a place to sleep, you are richer than 75% of this world. If you have money in the bank, in your wallet, and spare change in a dish someplace, you are among the top 8% of the world's wealthy. Last but not least, if you woke up this morning with more health and illness, you are more blessed than the million who will not survive this week. Today, our family is announcing an additional scholarship for the Guelph Gryphon player every year. We want to help grow and flourish the program by giving the best athletes a chance to succeed like many of us without the struggles of their financial imprint. May we continue to work together, nurture and support each other, and help grow the unique image of the Guelph Gryphons. I feel that the Guelph culture is the most precious heritage, for it is in our support that we reveal to ourselves and to others the inner vision which guides us as a community. I hope that it continues to ever more widely benefit all people, every kind of person, and all beings everywhere. Thank you.